Hey, it's working. Look at that. It's a miracle. Okay, here we go. Setting up. Very good. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and it is working today. Okay. I apologize being in my funeral suit. That is, yeah, unfortunate. But I thank you for letting me start my day with you. Unless you were at services this morning, then sorry, my day at services. We're going to be an hour today because I want to make sure that if you're going from here to Rabbi Schiff, you have a moment to, stretch, eat, get a cup of coffee or something, because back-to-back classes would be painful. It's you're on Zoom long enough. I did want to move this. I looked. I tried to find any other Sunday or Monday in the entire month. There was not a single one open. So this is it. This is all we get, and I thank you for putting up with it. So we're going to get started. Okay, here we go. We're going to get started. I'm going to be sharing a screen like usual. Okay, sharing screen. And then I'm going to move the screen around a little. Okay, I know it's up there. Let me see. Okay, I'm just going to be moving this around. Don't worry, I'll be muting. Okay, just in case you're wondering. Here we go. Okay, you're seeing some black box move around your screen probably. Okay, no. Okay. Interesting. Only on my screen is it blocking everything. And I want to do one more thing. Let's see. The only thing I want to do is mute. Okay, here we go. Oh, meeting controls, found it. Okay, participants and mute all. Okay, but you still have the ability to unmute yourself. There we go. So tell me, well, you can't tell me because I just muted you, but oh, you can see this thing moving around. Watch. Okay. There, can you see that thing moving around? No, a black box in the middle of the room, in the middle of your screen? Interesting. I must have fixed something without trying to. But give me a thumbs up if you can see Pittsburgh Jewish History 101. Probably only the bottom part of the page because I made it sideways because that's where your pictures used to be on the side. But now I've started putting your pictures on the top of my screen. So it's, yeah, so it's like a little column of it. Right, but
okay. The top half is what I see.
Oh, you see, okay. You see the top half of the screen. Okay, but you can read last month, Sunday, December 2020. Good. And it's too big, I know. Okay, here we go. We're going to get started. Last month, because it's the last month, and I'm seeing that there's so much information on each little topic. It takes a little longer, but we're going to lose a book today. I promised you last month that we're going to lose a book, and then we hit that moment last month. So last month, Sunday, December 20th, 10:30 a.m., we talked about the Irene Kaufman settlement, okay, which should sound a little like EKC. It's the beginning of Emma Farm and Irene Kaufman settlement, Camp Emma Farm. We had some disagreement on which Camp Emma Farm you went to, but in the end, Harvey relented, okay, and then we had the YMHA, it's a little harder to make the spelling for the village people, the H, the C is much easier, but the YMHA. And I was talking to my wife and she's like, we're talking about something. And someone said, oh, I met my wife at the Y, like a Jewish couple. I said, it's probably the YMHA, when they're talking about it. It was an older couple. And then we got to the Hebrew Institute, which was kind of the beginning of education for the whole community. All these synagogues, remember back in the old days, everyone's trying to do it themselves, working together. We saw great pictures of the Hebrew Institute, teaching nurses how to be, it was children, but it was also adults. And that's where we left off. So, and I think last month might have been an hour as well, because I think I had a funeral that day too. Someone just asked me, when's the last Sunday you haven't had a funeral? It's been pretty tough recently. So, but luckily with 10 funerals, I've had 5 babies. So, it's not 2 to 1. It is 2 to 1, but we've had more babies than we've ever had as well. So that's good. So today, Sunday, January 17th, 10:30 a.m. It's 10:35. It's not bad. We're ahead of schedule usual. We have no more Feldman. So if I put my Feldman book up here and it's not disappearing. The Jewish Experience of Western Pennsylvania, History, blah, 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 by Jacob Feldman. We finished him. If we were David Letterman, I'd throw it back there and you'd hear a little smash of glass, and we're done with Feldman. So all we have is Burston now, because yeah, she's still writing, and we're lucky that we were blessed to have Barbara with us with First Mondays, and I think she just called me. I have to call her back. Okay, don't tell her. Okay, so we're going to continue in Steel City Jews, the second of her books. She has 2 Steel City Jews, and that's the only book we have left. But along with that comes the Rao Archives, which doesn't miss a beat. Starting by 1915, we're in the 1920s. By 1915, the Rao has everything. They might not have a lot on 1776, but they certainly remember, if anyone's dealt with the Rao, they collect your family information. They collect synagogue information. I don't know if you have ever met Eric Leege. Wonderful. They do a great job. So no more Feldman. Barbara, we're all yours. Economic collapse and hard times. It's 1929. The roaring 20s and then the 30s stink, especially if you're Jewish. So economic collapse and hard times. 1929, what happens in 1929? The stock market crashes. The Great Depression. It's the Jews' fault. That's if you ask an anti-Semite. I was just teaching a bar mitzvah kid about the Black Plague, how less Jews died, and Jews always get blamed. Pittsburgh, unemployment is a problem in 1929, the late 20s, with the Great Depression and the stock market collapse. So we need more help. We saw this in early immigration time when Jews were coming from Russia with nothing. 1927, the United Hebrew Relief Association became JFWA. It's getting close to JFCS, Jewish Family Welfare Association. If you don't see a little blue thing on it, it's because I couldn't find anything on it. All right, but it's coming. 1931, the numbers of families on relief served by the Jewish Family Welfare Association doubles from the previous year. Just understand how bad it gets. It doubles the numbers as we see our unemployment numbers skyrocketing now. We're just admitting it now. Doubles from the previous year due to economic hardship and I missed it. And unemployment caused by the Depression. It was not good. The Depression was not good, if you're wondering. Okay, here we go. And now we get Barbara. 150. Okay, here it goes. Well, let's tell you a little about the extent of the problem. Oh, no. Stop. No, stop it. Wait once. Sorry. Can't mute my dog. Let me just, here, talk among yourselves. You can unmute yourselves. Let me just lock her up. Amy took the other one for a walk. Okay, wait 1 second. Okay, stop barking at yourself. Okay, here you go. You cannot bark. Stop. Okay. Into the crate.
Well, since we can unmute ourselves, everybody doing okay?
Just
Sure.
hiding.
Or why not?
How are you?
I'm okay. Not liking all the snow, but at least I had someone shovel for me yesterday. That was nice.
Well, fortunately, where I live, I have somebody shovel for me all the time.
Well,
I've got a snow blower.
I don't want a snow blow. It'll hurt me because it'll be all uphill and heavier than I can handle. So
Do not run yourself over with a snowblower. That's that good. I've
No.
actually heard that story once before. They
that
lived.
can happen.
Yeah,
Like
they lived.
lawnmowers.
Okay, dog is locked up. Only I can hear the dog barking now. So here we go. We'll go back to thank you for starting a conversation, Heidi. Okay, mute all. Very good. You still have the ability to unmute yourselves. Phone is ringing. It's just one of those days. Here it goes. Barbara Burston. Here we go. Barbara, teach us. You got to love Barbara. Here we go. Here we go. Barbara Burston, the extent of the problem. Oh, this is okay. So we're looking at how the Jewish Family Welfare Agency had to work so hard during this time in the late 20s, early 30s. The extent of the problem can be glimpsed in the figures reported by the Jewish Family Welfare Agency. In 1929, relief expenditures for this agency amounted to some $64,189. 2 years later, in 1931, the cost of relief had all but doubled to $123,305. And 1 year after that, in 1932, had risen to $222,394. It's exponentially increasing in the early 30s. By 1932, there were 1,576 open cases requiring relief, which involved more than 6,500 individuals out of a Jewish population of 53,000. So 6,500 out of 53,000 needed help in Pittsburgh. The strain on the Jewish agency was evident in the 1932 report of Mrs. Victor. She wrote that, and I quote, "The JFA has completed the most difficult year of its existence. The problem of continuing standards of family casework and at the same time caring for the actual needs of hundreds of families with a limited budget and wholly inadequate public funds was one that challenged every resource upon which the workers and the board could call. While the relief had I continue quoting, while the relief given has been inadequate, nevertheless, not a single family known to the Jewish Family Welfare Association has actually suffered eviction. They kept everyone from being evicted. No medical apparatus or special diets had ever been withheld. No child has been permitted to be separated from its parents because of lack of a decent home. And the children have not been taken from school in order to add to the family income. So that's a pretty good job. There is no doubt that revolutionary changes have come about within the last 2 years in family welfare agencies because of the unemployment crisis. So it's bad. Okay. For those of us who don't remember, the Great Depression, the early 30s, it wasn't good. And in the Jewish community, we're trying to keep up with the challenges. We're failing, and at the same time, keeping people from losing everything. So this, and the reason I said we might not have a lot on this is because we're going to get the Federation here. Now, at the time, we're going to call it the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies. You may know it as the Federation of Jewish Pittsburgh. So the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies comes about. So here it goes. Now, this we have some stuff on. Okay, and I'm going to shrink you a little. So now I can only see 5 pictures, including my own. Let's see if I can do it with my first try. And I did. And tell me, actually, I got to make you smaller. Sorry, people. I need to see more of the screen. Okay, now I see too much of the screen. Let me just slide that little bar over. Okay, good. I can see some of you. And what is this? This is from the, can you, oh, by the way, can you see a history of Federation up there? No. Yes. Yeah. It's so funny. Irv saying no and Jones saying yes. So and they're in the same square, by the way. So do you see a picture of a woman hugging a daughter? No. Okay. You're right. You see my other screen because I didn't write new share. Here we go. You do not see what I see. Do you see what I see? There you go. Now you see it. Now, okay, good. Because you were just saying you saw my paper that said Federation, a history of the Federation. Now, this is from, we can go to the source and then we'll go to the RAW. And this is the history of the Federation. This is from our Federation of Jewish Pittsburgh. As the preeminent source for all donors and provided services in philanthropy, the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh is the heart of Jewish giving. And since 1912, Federation has served as a centralized fundraising and convening body for the Jewish community and its beneficiary agencies. Okay, let me just help you out and figure out who. Okay, I found you. There we go. Done. Okay, and Federation coordinating a wide range of programs and working in concert with its partner agencies locally in Israel and around the world to address Jewish needs in the areas of health, education, and social welfare. Federation's efforts have touched and continue to touch the lives of countless Jews in every stage of life at home. It's more of an advertisement than a history, but it's Federation, right? The old joke, you get straight, you have a shipwreck and the husband and wife are stranded on a deserted island, and she's like, I'm so scared. He says, don't worry, I made a pledge to Federation. They'll find us. Okay, here it goes. Prior to the Great Depression, Local Jewish community leaders created the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies, FJP. Right? Not one of those things that rolls off, which in turn was responsible for the merger of 5 family welfare programs. Remember we were talking about one of them, and I said, where is it? It's going to be put into the Federation, which is today's Jewish Family and Children's Services, JFCS. With increased fundraising and service demands due to the Great Depressions, FJP joined the Community Chest, the forerunner of the United Way in 1932. We're probably going to stop reading this in one more paragraph. In 1936, the United Jewish Fund was created to raise funds for distribution via the new National United Jewish Appeal to aid and rescue European Jewish refugees from Nazi Germany, and later to aid the establishment of the State of Israel. In 1955, FJP and United Jewish Fund were consolidated into the current federation. And then it tells you should send them money. Okay, here it goes. So back to the piece of paper for 1 second. Okay, share. Okay, here it goes. So we have the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies. We're taking care of the Jewish community at the beginning of the Depression, before World War II. And here comes the row. So we're going to have we have the history from Federation's view, the row archives, and then we're going to have Barbara Burston. Okay, and we're going to find that that's going to become part of our format. Here we go. Let me give you a row because they got nice pictures too. Oh, that's small. You can't see it yet, so don't worry. Row Jewish Archive sharing. You can see it now, but I'm going to make it a little bigger. Okay, for my benefit. Okay. Still think you can see it. Okay, and I'll make the pictures bigger when we get to it. Actually, I'm going to make it even bigger, and we'll just do the pictures when we get to the pictures. Federation of Jewish Philanthropies. Okay, so it's not, sometimes these histories are just taken from their websites. This is not exactly the same, so we can do it. Federation of Jewish Philanthropies of Pittsburgh. Okay, here's a quote. In 1915, we're expending all monies collected, but we'll need more money for 1915 to secure increased contributions. It is necessary to have the cooperation and goodwill of every Jewish person in Pittsburgh. And this is from the Federation in 1915. From 1900 to 1920, Pittsburgh's Jewish population grew from 4,000 to 30,000. Remember that whole, this is before the 1920s, from the 20 years before the 20s, look at how much we grew from 4,000 to 30,000. And most didn't have a lot with them. This was before the Germans came, they had money, and then Eastern European came, the Litvox. As persecuted Jews fleeing from Russian Empire, Eastern Europe came to the United States. Many social service organizations were founded during this time to help provide for the health, education, and well-being of Pittsburgh's growing Jewish immigrant population. Each organization relied on donations to fund its work, and the Pittsburgh Jewish community became overwhelmed by solicitations for money. Remember, they had to start cutting people away. The first years of the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies of Pittsburgh were the beginnings of a new era of centralized fundraising for local charities. Everyone's doing it on their own. The community-wide campaign. Now, a single donation, large or small, could be given to the Federation, which then funded the charitable work of its affiliated organizations. Okay, you get, it looks like 2 more paragraphs. The first agencies to join the Federation in 1912 were Montefiore, the IKC, the Gusky Home, and the United Hebrew Relief Association, Pittsburgh House of Shelter. We learned all about these things. The Jewish Home for the Aged, the Emma Pharma Association, the Council for Jewish Women, the Hebrew Ladies Hospital Aid Society. We learned history of all those. Many volunteers devoted their time to one or more of these organizations, and the money needed to provide the wide range of services offered was now raised and distributed by the Federation. You can think how helpful that was. In 1936, to meet the growing needs of Jews living overseas. Now, 1936 is a little ahead of where we're at right now. We're in 29. The United Jewish Fund was formed as a permanent fundraising of the Federation to aid Jewish Appeal and European Jewish refugees. In addition, funding was directed to local efforts in Jewish education, anti-Semitism, Israel, 1948. Okay, and good. United Jewish Fund and Federation joined in 1955, creating what we know as the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh. The end. Okay, so let me give you some pictures. Now this, I don't usually have to switch to a different screen. Okay, there are going to be 7 pictures. Okay, and You can see that, right? I know you can. That's gorgeous. Okay, here it goes. This is the Gusky Orphanage, so one of the organizations that joined the Federation. The Gusky, this is a picture in 1912. The Gusky Orphanage and Home became one of the first affiliated charities of the Pittsburgh Federation of Jewish Philanthropies. Yeah, Gusky was known as the Jewish Santa Claus. You know, we read about him, a department store, Gusky's. Okay, here we go. Next picture. Okay, that's our Jewish newspaper, the Jewish Criterion, 1922. The cover of the Jewish Criterion newspaper promoting the annual fundraising campaign. Yep, we've been giving money for a long time of the Pittsburgh Federation of Jewish Philanthropies. So you hear, I'll make it a little bigger for the picture. This is the front cover, and it's the capital campaign. Yeah, so they're showing all the organizations that Federation. It's a little hard to see, but I can see Montefiore, I can see Gusky Orphanage, I can see the Home of the Aged, I can see Irene Kaufman Settlement, and something in the middle. Okay, but what we're seeing is the Pittsburgh Federation of Jewish Philanthropies, 1922. That's their annual campaign, and it's on the front page of the newspaper. And now Federation kind of runs our Jewish newspaper. So last week, they got to put the whole ad on for the trip to Israel. You want to go to Israel? June 2022. We're going to Israel with Federation. You're invited. It's not cheap. Okay. But it's a good trip. Okay. It's funny, a lot of these pictures we've seen before. This picture we have seen when we studied the group. So here's 1912. This is the men's study group at the Jewish Home of the Aged, which we studied about 2 months ago in Pittsburgh's Hill District. The home was one of the first beneficiary agencies of the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies in 1912. So we have seen this picture when we studied the Home for the Aged. Let's see, 4th of 7 pictures. Next, this picture we've seen too. It's the Irene Kaufman settlement. Another, yeah, because to understand why we see these repetition of pictures, the Federation helped with all these organizations. So these you're gonna just show up to take a picture of the Federation building is just to see like an office building, right? Go right now. It's just an office building. Yeah, but what they do, they work with all these organizations. This is the Irene Kaufman settlement in 1912. Another one, 5. Now this is new. Okay, so let's see what we got here. This is 1912. This is the invitation to the first meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies. I'll read it to you if I can read it. Let's see. The Board of Trustees of the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies of Pittsburgh requests the honor of your presence at a dinner preceding the first annual meeting of the organization. Wednesday evening, January 29th at 7 o'clock, Fort Pitt Hotel, the English room, and I think it's going to cost $1.25 per plate. The good old days. Okay, that should be $125 per plate now. Okay, actually probably more. Just saw something was I saw something recently I got invited to, $200 a plate. Okay, this picture we've seen before as well from the row, and this is a 1912 picture from the Jewish Home for the Aged. Okay, we saw the men studying, the women lighting the candles. The good old days. Okay, and the last picture for Federation. Oh, this one we have not seen before, 1924. The Federation of Jewish Philanthropies of Pittsburgh organized a community-wide fundraising campaign, such as the 1924 campaign to build a new facility for Montefiore. So again, you go through Federation to raise money for the new Montefiore Hospital. Here is the Jewish Criterion. You can see number 21, volume 964, the leading national weekly devoted to Jewish interest, Jewish Criterion. And what do we have here in 1924? Give with all thy heart, right? The new Montefiore Hospital campaign for 1,500,000. All right, that would buy you, I think, a room there now or a wing. You can maybe get a hallway. Okay, October 23rd to November 3rd. They didn't have very long campaigns. I've always been impressed with, like, look at these campaigns. Like, campaigns usually last a long time for us. They're trying to raise 1,500,000 since from October 23rd to November 3rd. That ain't long. All right, so that is the Rao take on Federation. Okay, here we go. So we have Federation's take on Federation. We have the Rao's take on Federation. And now we have Barbara Burston. And then we'll move on to synagogues that are in trouble, because everyone's in trouble in the early 30s. So here we go. Barbara Burston. Okay, don't worry, I'm watching time. If you are going to Rabbi Schiff, you will have a break. Okay, I won't let you down. Federation, here it goes. This is Barbara Burston, and we'll move on from Federation. The Federation minutes in 1933 and 1934 reflect the dire situation the community continued to face. Early in 1933, Dr. Bernstein noted that the Jewish Family Welfare Association had passed the 850 figure for actual relief cases when up to that time, 150 cases had been seen as a heavy load, right? We're not talking about 2, 3, 4. It's more 5, 6, 7 times as bad. The Federation continued to be bombarded by requests for assistance from its beneficiary agencies that it was unable to fulfill. For example, in June 1934, a plea from S. Leo Russlander for more money for the IKS, that's the Irene Kaufman settlement, was rejected, as was a request from the Emma Farm Association. They just couldn't handle the need. These requests aside, there were new and ongoing pressures related to the escalating anti-Semitism at home and abroad, and to the plight of Jews overseas, right? So don't forget, this is the early 30s. We know it's getting bad here, and it's bad there, and it's bad everywhere. The Federation turned down the application of the non-sectarian Anti-Nazi League in 1934, for example, to become a beneficiary agency of the Federation. So that could have been part of the Federation, an anti-Nazi league. That organization had recently been formed in response to the persecution of Jews in Germany under Hitler, right? We know bad things are happening and we couldn't do anything about it. The Federation was also reminded that it had done nothing in the past 5 years to aid the Joint Distribution Committee, which was helping Jews overseas. So while what we're saying here is, when we say charity starts at home, people abroad suffer. By September 1934, the situation had gotten so bad that the Federation itself was forced to mortgage its building for $71,000. So it wasn't like someone was making a profit here. Everyone was suffering. So this is how bad it's gotten. And we have this Federation that's trying its best, but unable to keep up with the need. And what we really see is the Jews in Europe, right? We know what's about to happen. We know the future. Get no help, because the problems are so bad at home. So synagogues are also having trouble, right? Now, I do find that when times are bad, people seem to go to synagogue. I was talking to a bunch of rabbis after that wonderful thing in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and we saw a higher number of people. Whenever there's something going on, a national crisis, we see a higher number come to services. But that doesn't mean that the places financially are doing better, and so synagogues are also in trouble. You might have praying, but you got no money. This is the Great Depression. So here it goes. Rodef Shalom. Barbara, tell us what's going on in the boots on the ground. Let's see what's going on in Pittsburgh. Rodef Shalom. 2 paragraphs. Rodef Shalom was not the only synagogue to be so tested. Immersed as it was in deficits and cuts, other synagogues were reeling from drastically reduced membership income and mortgage payments due. Okay, now it's a list of synagogues having trouble. The ones that we've learned before. The Kesser Torah Synagogue, formerly Kaiser Torah, had a $30,000 debt and was largely in default from the summer of 1930. The sexton at Tree of Life, Abraham Goldstein, had his salary reduced to $1,500 in March 1931. Morris Levin, rabbi at Adath Jeshurun, had his salary of $2,400 cut during the Depression to $500. Saul Levin, his son, recounted an amusing story in response to that cut. This is the rabbi who went from $2,400 to $500. As a result of the family's financial strain, his parents rented a room on the 3rd floor of their home to a Christian couple. When the couple proceeded to put up a Christmas tree in the rabbi's home that December, there was terrible turmoil because in the rabbi's house, there was a Christmas tree. When people protested to my father, he shrugged, saying it was their home and they could do what they wanted, and what a wonderful country this was. Right? So the synagogue cuts the rabbi's salary by, a fifth, down to a fifth of his salary. And then he has to rent out a room to a Christian family. They put a Christmas tree, and then the synagogue complains there's a Christmas tree. He was a much more positive answer. He just said, what a wonderful country. Some rabbis would say, it's your fault. Here it goes. Or it's the world's fault. The plight of Rabbi Levin was not unique. So much so that it became the subject of editorial comment in the Criterion, the Jewish newspaper, entitled "Pay Your Rabbis." That was the title of the editorial comment. Pay your rabbis. The newspaper deplored the fact that some congregations in the city had not paid their rabbis anything for months, many months. The paper insisted that the interest on a mortgage is to our mind less important than a rabbi's salary. This is something we would have our readers understand is not merely a congregational issue, but one which reflects upon the entire Jewish community. It is a sad state of affairs when we have to make an appeal like this in the columns of a Jewish journal. I just want to remember that. I thought it was very interesting. It's always the first thing to go when synagogues have trouble is the rabbi's salary. I'm always talking to rabbis, about what's going on out there. Okay, so at the time we have all these we have Federation trying to help all these organizations. Every organization is in trouble. This is the Great Depression in the early 30s. The numbers, right, are huge by 1920, and then our numbers have ballooned, and now no one has any money or jobs. The synagogues, all the organizations, all these are having trouble. But there's also families getting started. Okay, families that we know of today. The Shapiro family is going to be our first family we're going to meet. You may know the Shapiros. Not Shapiro, but Shapiro family, because you may have heard of a little place called Giant Eagle. And so, I spoke at the Shapiro's home last year. So it didn't go over well for the Orthodox families there, but the others, people liked me. Okay, so I find that Orthodox families don't always love me. Okay, here it goes. Let's meet the Shapiro family. Actually, Barbara talks a little about them, and then we have the Rao, because the Rao talks about families as well. Okay, they have. If you haven't seen the Rao archives, it's absolutely amazing. So here it comes. 193. Okay, Frida and Saul Shapiro. So how did they get started? Where did Giant Eagle come from? Okay, let me just help you out. Here we go. Unless someone's trying to talk, I think he just sneezed. There we go. Got you. Okay. Don't worry. I muted you. Here it goes. Frida and Saul Shapiro met at the University of Pittsburgh in the early 1930s, getting married right after graduation in 1934, right? Bad time in the world. They were both 20 years old. Frida reminisced how they wanted to keep their romance a secret in those days. Marriages were postponed. Okay, because right, it's bad to get married. She talked about how they didn't have money to really go on dates. We'd simply sit down on the porch after a walk, she said, and talk and neck. That means kissing for you people who are, a little younger than me. Her wedding band cost $10. According to Frida, Saul had no money to pay for his tuition at Pitt, but he was able to get a National Council of Jewish Women scholarship and another from Pitt. Saul was very sympathetic to the right of workers to organize and strike, so he chose to go into company towns to help organize coal miners with a group from the University of Pittsburgh, right? Remember that this is the time of strikes and unions as well. As Frida remarked, he could have easily been lynched. That did happen. Later, Saul Shapiro got a job as a tenant selection supervisor for the housing authority. While he wanted to promote a liberal agenda of integration in the public housing complex, there were separate stairwells for blacks and whites. All right, this is the 1930s, early 1930s, mid 1930s. When he tried to put one black family in the white stairwell, there was a trouble, recalled Frida. Frida herself went on to actively concern herself with the relations between blacks and whites and multiple social justice issues in her long career as a professional social worker and volunteer on serving on multiple boards in the community. So this is the beginning of the Shapiro family. And again, he didn't come from money. They started from nothing. So here it goes. Let's meet the Rao Archives, which always does a great job. Okay, let's see if I can do this right. Okay. Okay, no. Now I got it. Okay. Only took me 2 times. Okay, here we go. The Shapiro family. You don't see it yet, I know. There you do. Now you see it. Okay. I'll show you pictures after words. Okay. We got a lot of history here. The Shapiro family, Samuel Goldstein immigrated, we've heard of him, to Pittsburgh from Lithuania and peddled dry goods in the Hill District from a horse-drawn wagon. His son Joseph Goldstein went to live with his grandmother as a young boy after his mother died in childbirth, and Samuel remarried. After graduating from Fifth Avenue High School, Joseph Goldstein got a job as a billing clerk for Lauf and Company, a grocery wholesaler on Penn Avenue. 6 months later, he became a salesman and began traveling throughout the small towns of Western Pennsylvania. By the end of World War I, Goldstein was a successful salesman, and 2 customers, Joseph Porter and Ben Chait, convinced him to expand. Together, they started the Eagle Grocery Company, the forerunner of Giant Eagle supermarket chain. Here we go. Oh, now I have to make it smaller if I want to be able to read. Actually, I just have to move your faces out of my way. Here we go. There we go. Okay. In addition to his business interests, Joseph Goldstein was active in community work. He was the president of the Hebrew Free Loan Association, which started here in Pittsburgh, a life trustee of the United Jewish Federation, which we met today, and a board mentor of Montefiore Hospital and the Jewish Community Center. He was also a charter member of B'nai Israel congregation in East Liberty, which we met a month ago. Joseph Goldstein married Dora Bernstein, who had immigrated from Pittsburgh to Russia, from Russia in 1903. She attended night classes at the Council House, which we learned about, and later earned $3 a week as a bookkeeper for the Singer sewing machines on Penn Avenue in downtown. Here we go. We're almost meeting Shapiro's. Okay. Joseph and Dora Goldstein had 3 children, Frida, Morris, and Leah. The family lived for a time on Cliff Street in the Hill District before moving to a rented house on Point Breeze in 1917. The family later moved near Shenley Park on Hobart Street in Squirrel Hill. Good place to cut through during traffic. Frida Goldstein attended Taylor Alderdice and earned a degree in social work from the University of Pittsburgh before marrying fellow student Saul Shapiro. Now we got the Goldsteins get together with the Shapiros. Saul Shapiro. After graduating, so this is Frida and Saul. These are the people we were talking about with Barbara Burston. After graduating from Pitt, they spent 3 years in New York, where she earned degrees from Columbia University's Teachers College and New York School of Social Work, and he studied at Columbia University, law. They returned to Pittsburgh in 1937. Okay, so this is a little past where we are in history. Frida Shapiro was a caseworker for the Children's Service Bureau, now the County Office of Children, Youth, and Families, until 1941, when she had her first child, and they had 4 children, David Shapiro, Daniel, Ralph, and Edith. Beginning in the 1960s, I want to try to get to Giant Eagle and our David Shapiro. Beginning in the 1960s, right on the bottom of the page if you're looking, Frida Shapiro increasingly devoted time to social causes and became a greatly admired volunteer. Her work involved education, healthcare, race relations, women's issues, and poverty. She sat on board of dozens of agencies, including the Pittsburgh Foundation, the United Way of Allegheny County, which hadn't started yet when we started, the United Jewish Federation, University of Pittsburgh. She was behind the efforts to establish free lunch programs and preschool initiatives in the public schools. As director of Women in the Community Service, she helped establish one of the first non-residential Job Corps centers for women in the country. She was a life member of the National Council of Jewish Women, NCJW, Pittsburgh section, and was president of the organization from 66 to 68. Working with Marcia Frumerin, she was involved in pioneering NCJW oral history project. Okay, I can see David and Daniel coming here. Her philanthropic efforts brought numerous awards and distinctions, including the annual Specter Award, Florence Reisenstein Award for Advance of Human Rights and Dignity, Good People from Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations, as well as honors from the Red Cross, Salvation Army. Pittsburgh Magazine named her one of the 100 most influential Pittsburghers of the century. Upon his return to Pittsburgh in 1937, and there it is, where we can see the end. Upon his return to Pittsburgh in 1937, Saul Shapiro worked for the newly formed Pittsburgh Housing Authority, becoming a manager of the Glen Hazel Housing Project, and later the associate director of the authority. He left in 1945 to join Giant Eagle, where he was president from 1968 until he retired in 1980. During his 35 years with the company, Giant Eagle expanded widely, as you noticed, opening stores across the Pittsburgh suburbs into neighboring West Virginia and Ohio. I think it's farther than that now. I've seen Giant Eagle everywhere. Their son, David Shapiro, very nice house in Fox Chapel, nice guy, took over the company after his father retired. David Shapiro married Karen Adler, who was born in Ohio and raised in Florida. After raising 3 children, Karen, who passed away in 2005, if you're looking there, 1945 to 2005, became a highly regarded Jewish community leader locally and internationally. She was the second female president in the history of the United Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh. She traveled the world to assess the needs of Jewish communities in Europe, South America, and Israel, and promoted numerous interfaith and education programs in Pittsburgh. Their daughter, Laura, succeeded her father as Giant Eagle's chief executive officer in 2012. Daniel Shapiro was the Deputy Attorney General and the head of the Pennsylvania Crime Commission, 7274, Assistant U.S. Attorney for Western Pennsylvania, District, Pennsylvania. He is currently a partner at Marcus & Shapiro. Ada Shapiro, a psychiatrist, opened a private practice in 1991. She followed her mother into volunteering. 2013 became the first female chair of the Pittsburgh Foundation. Ralph Shapiro, an attorney, lives in Los Angeles. And that is the Shapiro family. Okay, I'm going to go back to my paper. I'm going to go back to your faces, and I'm going to give you a moment to breathe. Here we go. Before we get to the Rudenbergs, let me just see who's around. Okay, there's some of you here. Any of you ever work for the Giant Eagle Corporation? Yeah, I know a lot of people have. You know, it's a lot of Jews, but it's not it. And you know, there were issues because it was, you know, Jews and it was open on Shabbat, but you know, it's such a big organization. You can still make the Orthodox happy by signing something. All right, so we are going to continue because I have to get you out on time. Okay, so yeah, we're so close. I don't know if I stop talking, maybe, but then it'd be very quiet. Rudenbergs, let's meet the Rudenbergs, and then that's the families for today. And then communists.
I think it's Rudenbergs.
Thank you. That's even better. That's thank you, Shelley. All right, so the Rudenbergs. Okay, let's meet them. And the Rudenbergs were another couple who got their start in the heady atmosphere of the 1930s and were influenced by the activist agenda of some Pitt professors. Harold Rudenberg grew up in Nemacolin, a coal mining town, not the resort, a coal mining town where the Buckeye Coal Company was owned by Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company. From 5th to 8th grade, he went to school with coal miners' children, an experience that he believed helped shape his consciousness about workers and their needs. He transferred to the University of Pittsburgh as a junior and immediately became involved with the Amalgamated Iron, Steel, and Tin Workers Union, no doubt prompted by Professor Bryn Hoved, who also inspired the Shapiros to work for liberal causes. So, you know, again, your liberal college teachers influenced those students and they became interested in workers' rights. He concentrated on learning everything he could about the union, becoming a walking encyclopedia, and made himself indispensable to the labor movement. Both Harold and his future wife, Kitty, became members of the League for Social Justice, that is not superheroes, which was founded by Jane Addams. Rudenberg joined the Steel Workers Organization Committee, SWOC, and when he was just 22 years old in 1936 and became their research director and contract negotiator. He was so important to the union that one economist wrote in 1940 that Rudenberg had placed his organization among the leading American unions in the scope and quality of research material, which is available to union officers and labor students. He was considered the right-hand man of Philip Murray, the president of the Steelworkers Union from 1942, when the union was founded, until 1952. Rudenberg later switched sides and became a businessman, but always advocated for better relations between labor and management. So we meet the Rudenberg family. Let's do the row. Here we go. Let's do it again. There we go. And now I have to move your faces. Oh no, there it is. New share. You don't see it yet. That's interesting. I probably, yeah. No, I don't think there were pictures. Okay, I'm talking to myself. Let me do my screen share here. It's new share. Okay, Rudenberg family. Okay. The Rudenberg family. Okay. Harold J. Rudenberg grew up in Greene County, PA, where his father owned a general store while attending American University in Washington, D.C., where my son goes. I got rid of him last week. It is so quiet in my house. I love it. He's louder than my puppy. While attending American University of Washington, D.C. in the early 1930s, he worked as an investigator for the United States Senate Special Committee, investigating the munitions industry, and was also involved in research for the Brookings Institution. The WIS work led to his affiliation with the Amalgamated Iron Steel, which we talked about, later Steelworkers Organization Committee, SWOC, and became United Steelworkers of America. Rudenberg gained national recognition prior to World War II as the Steel Union Research Director, Chief Economist for the Union. He took leave 42-44, worked for the War Production Board. In that capacity, he was prominent in the Steel for Victory steelmaking drive in Pittsburgh during the summer of 1943. After the war, Rudenberg worked to implement his ideas as an executive for the Portsmouth Steel Company in Ohio. He headed up several companies, 50s and 60s, and spent the final decades leading the American Locker Group. After transferring to the University of Pittsburgh, Rudenberg met Catherine Kitty Minori, who had immigrated to 1927 with her mother into Wilkinsburg to rejoin her father, who had arrived in 24. Her father, Emil, worked as an electrical engineer for Westinghouse. In addition to his work, let's talk about why we bring up the Rudenbergs. It's not a name that, the young people know. In addition to his work, Rudenberg was a major supporter of Israeli causes. After the Six-Day War in 1967, he offered his services to the country and became involved in the high-tech manufacturing. He was a chairman of the Rehovot Instrument Company in Israel, 68 to 78, and the couple lived in Israel part-time, 68 to 73. In the early 60s, Rudenbergs began collecting art. And that's probably, a lot of people have heard of Rudenberg through the art. Their interest increased after moving to Israel. We are personally acquainted with every major artist in Israel and still count many of them among our friends. Our social circle in Jerusalem was very eclectic, always including some of our artists and other collectors. Kitty Rudenberg told the Jewish Chronicle in 1998. Over the years, Rudenbergs donated hundreds of works to organizations in Israel and Pittsburgh, including to the United Jewish Federation. In 1991, Kitty Rudenberg undertook an ambitious project to catalog Jewish art in Pittsburgh as part of the larger effort to create a comprehensive international database of Jewish art. The Pittsburgh Index of Judaica and Jewish Art trained volunteers to document ritual objects housed in area synagogues. Among founding members were Marsha Fummerman and Shirley Stark. The organization later became known as the Kitty Rudenberg Index of Judaica and Jewish Art. The organization disbanded in 2007. So, have you heard of the Rudenberg family? Okay, I see Marilyn. I'm unmuting you, Marilyn. So Marilyn, in Arizona, what time is it there?
Oh, it's 9:18, but they were very close friends of my parents and lived around the corner from us. I spent time in their home probably in the 50s or late 40s. But I remember my father said, and we lived later in Aliquippa, and that was the home of the J&L steel mill. And he used to talk about coming out to Aliquippa and saying that the J&L stood for, instead of Jones and Laughlin, it stood for justice and liberty. That was part of his, steel, his labor movement. Yeah. And so anyway, it's interesting to hear about them because they're people I actually knew. So yeah. I'm 83, so then they're a generation older than mine. But he wrote also a book where he mentioned my father. So really? That was really, my father worked for the Bureau of Mines in Oakland in those days. So it was an interesting time. So thank you. I'm glad I tuned in today.
Marilyn, it's always a pleasure. It's a small world now that we live in. Everyone,
it sure is.
Everyone gets a front row seat, no matter where you are in the country or the world. So welcome. And yeah, again, the Rudenbergs, I've heard the name through the art, industry. Anyone else for a Rudenberg or Shapiro comments before we finish up today? I think we might hit the bottom, which is a historical moment. This is for Jewish Pittsburgh history, hitting the bottom of paper. That's historical. Okay, here it goes. Let me get to my new share. Okay, we'll go back to my piece of paper and all right, no bar. That's it, right? Next month. Okay, here it goes. Communists. All right, not a bad word for us people, where there's a lot of Jewish communists. Karl Marx, Jew, and Labor Lysium closes. What is the Labor Lysium? Okay, we're in the 30s, early 30s, late 20s. What is the Labor Lysium? Okay, here we go. Sometimes we get their closing before we get their opening. Here we go. Let me move you out of my way. There you go. And now I'm gonna make it bigger. And I'll show you the pictures. There are 6 pictures. So what is the Labor Lysium? Okay, 1917, but we're studying this. Wait, oh, you can't see it? Oh, wait, only I can see it. That's true. Thank you. Now you can see it. I love seeing head shake. Okay, that really helps me. The Labor Lysium, I could go on forever. The Labor Lysium, now the reason we're talking about a 1970 organization is it's going to close in 1930, which is where we're at. We're in 1930. The Labor Lysium, housed in a large building on Miller Street in the Hill District, opened in 1917 after 10 years of fundraising by local Jewish labor groups. The building had meeting rooms and large auditorium and became the center of Pittsburgh's immigrant labor movement. The local Workmen's Circle Branch 45 was headquartered there. Other groups, such as the Third Ward Jewish branch of the Socialist Party and the Jewish Communist Party, held their meetings at the Lyceum. Yeah, what's his name? Didn't like us. Yeah, J. Edgar Hoover didn't like us. Okay, here it is. Lectures by labor leaders and speakers from around the country were held in the building. The space was also used by neighborhood clubs for dances and recreation. Yiddish theater performances that were presented in the auditorium. The few but active local Jewish labor unions maintain offices in the Lyceum, including the local chapters, the Amalgamated Clothing Workers, the Stogie Workers of America, right? Merv Kendall used to make stogies, and the Hebrew as a kid, and the Hebrew Bakers Union. The groups affiliated with the Labor Lyceum under the direction of the Workmen's Circle helped raise money and food donations for striking steelworkers and coal miners throughout the region and supported many labor strikes with local donations. The Labor Lyceum closed in 1930 after conflict between the Socialist and the Communist parties of the Lyceum. And now let's give you some pictures. Okay, and I'll make them a little smaller so I can see it. Okay, and let me just help you out there. I've got it. And okay, it's a 1930 picture, 1932 actually. Okay, I got some Yiddish there. 1910 Labor Lyceum. And Paul Herman, a member of the Hebrew Bakers Union, wearing a sign in support of the Bakers strike in 1932. The Hebrew Bakers Union met at the Labor Lyceum on Miller Street until the Lyceum closed in 1930. So we, again, a nice little 32 strike. That looks older than 32. That car looks older, but don't get me started. Okay, here it goes. Next. Here we go. This is 1909. A ticket from the annual outing of the Labor Lyceum, 1909. Okay, $1 tickets. Okay, take Castle Shannon and Fairhaven cars, formerly the old steam route. Formerly the old steam route. Get off of the Fairhaven station. Guides will direct you to the Grove. They had guides, annual outing for the Pittsburgh Labor Lyceum, summer or labor, September 19th, 1909. Next. One more picture. Here's another one. This is 1929. Officers of the Labor Lyceum. Okay, they look like men. The building was located on Miller Street, Hills District, used by labor groups, guest speakers, performers 17 to 30. And here is their board, officers of the board in 1929. Okay, Jews, but normal looking people. All right, so probably not a lot of kippas in the communists. Okay, it's socialists. And here we go. And they didn't get along. A lot of people group communists and socialists together. It's what tore them apart too. This is 1932. I guess we got pictures of the Bakers Union strike. Hebrew Bakers Union strike in 1932. The Bakers Union was one of Pittsburgh's few Pittsburgh Jewish labor unions. Met the Labor Lysium before it closed in 1930. So let's see if we get that picture a little bigger. It's a non-union bread. So you should buy bread from union. Okay. And I'm looking here. It looks like Brit. I think that's like Yiddish, almost like a Yiddish for bread. You know, like when you see you can read out the word in phonetics. Okay, next. Two more pictures. 1928, the office of the Jewish Daily Forward newspaper. Okay, managed by Joseph Weisberg and Secretary Bess Toposky. No idea. Maybe they had an office in the Labor Lysium. It doesn't actually explain why that picture's there. And then finally, Hebrew Bakers Union. That's where our pictures are from. Okay, non-union bread. Union had its headquarters. Okay, so I guess our pictures are from the Bakers strike in Bakers Union strike in 1932. So that we met people, we met organizations. The world's fallen apart. Europe, we're unable to help, and it's fallen apart. Certain families are getting their start. Shapiro's, Rudenberg's. Obviously, we know what's coming. World War II is coming. The Holocaust is coming. What's going on in Pittsburgh during these times? Well, probably a lot about the war and what's going on overseas. But before we get to, the world falling apart, next month, Sunday, January 21st at 10:30 a.m., we'll be trying to, hopefully, looks like we've hit it, the Jewish connection to the arts and culture in Pittsburgh. So, we're doing the synagogues and businesses. We're going to look at arts and culture and the Jewish part of it. Yes, I'm listening.
That's not next month. That's next week.
Yeah.
Did I write January?
Yes.
Make that a here. Wait, keep looking. Okay, wait. Here we go. Wait. Let me help you out there. Okay.
I know you miss us, Rabbi, but really.
Yeah, I would love it. Okay, but no, it doesn't. It says January. So very good. So February 21st at 10:30 a.m. I'm sure January 21st wasn't even a Sunday. So, no, it was in 4 days. So do not show up. Well, what's in 4 days from now? Thursday? So I probably have a Thursday thing, but that's a long time from now. So next month, February 21st at 10:30 a.m., we're going to look at the Jewish connection to the arts and culture in Pittsburgh. I'm going to stop the share. Here we go. Look at your faces. And, look, there's some people here. Shirley, what do you got?
Just a comment. The Working Men's Circle, number 45, has a cemetery. And
I saw that.
Next to the New Light Cemetery in Shaler, and my grandparents are buried there. My grandfather was a capitalist with a business in the produce in the strip, but he was an active member of 45.
And I saw that when we were reading that I could have clicked on Workman's Circle 45 because it was something, people were connected to it. Very cool. So that's
my grandfather is buried there too.
Really?
Yeah.
It's such interesting. Amy and I walk through cemeteries. It's like our thing. It's kind of a safer thing to do. Better than walking in my neighborhood, walking cemeteries, a lot less people who breathe on you there. And we were walking through the National Cemetery, the Alleghenies recently. And we're saying, there's different people, you could be buried in a Jewish cemetery or your local one, but you could also be buried in if you're a veteran or if you're part of the Workman Circle. We saw that there was even synagogues that in the old days that were synagogues based on your profession, and that's you could see that there may have been a union synagogue at one point. So very interesting. Workman Circle 45. So Shirley, very nice. I've seen it. I know I saw it somewhere. I can picture the gate. Yeah,
it's next door. If
The
you
New
go
Light.
to the New Light Cemetery, you can get to Working Men's Circle right through the cemetery. They're butted up next to each other. It's now being taken care of by the Jewish Burial Association.
Thank God. Well, it's good. A lot of these cemeteries, they lose their people watching over them and they get overgrown, and there's not a lot of people being buried in them right now. And then all of a sudden, I know I went to see my grandfather's grave in Jacksonville, Florida. You couldn't even tell it was a cemetery. It was just like an overgrown field. And then you get into the field and you can find stones in there. You know, so it's good. I remember when the community said we need to take care of these cemeteries. Yeah, that was a big moment. Very nice. It's 11:29. You can start getting ready for Rabbi Schiff at 12 noon. And I thank you for I really try not to do too much in one day, certainly not within 2 hours of each other. So I apologize, but I also don't want to take 2 months off. You know, that's like the old days where we just take a month off. No, that's no fun either.
Rabbi, your class was here first, so, you know.
That's true. That's
Right.
That's true. But, you know, Rabbi Schiff, he gets paid more. So, you know, go enjoy him, and you get what you get your money's worth. But go enjoy him. It really, and remember, you know, it's he's there to provoke you and make you think. Yeah. So and it's okay to disagree. Okay. So God bless you. See you soon, and hopefully I won't be wearing a suit and tie the next time. Thank you. Okay.